experience with Vietnam.
Thank you. So I'm going to share some of what I recall of Vietnam, and it'll be the condensed version and also the abridged version. And I've decided to share just those aspects of the experience that I don't recall anyone here in the membership talking about in the last 9+ years I've been here, maybe longer than that. So I'm thinking that probably what I'll talk about today, there are a few members I know who are familiar with my experience, and I'll just mention a few of them. Jose Gonzalez is probably one of them. Stan Paprocki, he's not here today, the president. And then, of course, Owen Oliver, who doesn't share too much, but actually his story, if you were ever to tell it, would make my story look like amateur hour. So we'll see what happens there. And also John Thompson, I don't see him over there. I can't see that far. He's my hero, one of them. He has an experience very similar to mine. And then lastly, Louisiana Joe. He told me his last name. I think it's Duran. Joe, are you here someplace? Durrell? Wiggle, because I can't see that far. There you are. Okay. So Joe Durrell, Louisiana, is that correct? Yeah. So his experience will be different, very similar too. So let's begin the beginning here. And let's a couple other points here. I was given earlier the green light to do a 5-minute introduction, and I've decided to forego that in the interest of time. There are time constraints here, and I'm on the honor system, so I'm aiming for 35 minutes. So I might pick up the pace, and for the reason I got to fit some stuff in here. So that's point number one. And the other green light I got was what Jim just mentioned, and that is there'll be a 2-part sharing. So today will be about infantry, and then in January, I'll be talking about armored cavalry. There is a tie-in there. It's Tactical Operations Center. We're going to nix that completely. There's just enough time. We're not going to write a book. We're just sharing a few things here. So that said, let's get rocking and rolling here. If I can find my copious notes here. All right, so let's go to, let's go to slide number 2, please. Okay, so that's at the end of the tour right there. After that picture was taken, then probably a week later, I got in the mail another medal, which doesn't show, and so that came in the mail. Okay, next slide. So this is the beginning. So we just saw the end. This is the beginning. I was skinny mini there. I won't tell you my weight, but okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, go to the map. Next slide down. Nope, next. Okay, there you go. All right, so let's begin at the beginning here. So, no, go back to that map. We're getting flicker or vertigo here.
Are you pushing it?
No, we're going to jump ahead to the map of Vietnam. That's the one I want.
All right, we switched out. Just a minute. I got to put it back in mode.
Okay, while he's doing that, there you go. Keep that one. So the DC-10 was at capacity with fresh troops, and it was flying in 1970, right after the Cambodian incursion. And I'm going to point right here. No, keep that. Oh, I'm just trying to hit the.
Oh boy, Robert.
Well, you said this is.
Robert, can I have the pointer?
Yeah. Well, I was hitting the red button. Okay. Well, let's try. Okay, your questions. What else you want to know? Okay. So I'm trying to get to the Vietnam map, and there's this is really important here because this is how it started. I'm skipping the stateside altogether, and that was 9 months. So if we ever get to the map, okay, there you go, cool. So the DC-9 was you do the pointing so I don't screw this up. You'll see an island there in the upper right corner, and that's the island of, what's the name of it? What is it? Okay, it's Hainan Dao. And then in Vietnamese, a lot of words start from the throat, so it's something like Hainan Dao. So the airplane was to the right of that. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, probably about 35,000 feet in the air. And we were the new troops coming in, darkness. And when I looked out the right side where I was sitting, I could see the island, what I consider to be the island of Hainan Dao, based on the trajectory where we came from. And it was very dark and lights were out. So I knew we were getting near. Now, shortly after that, the DC-10 started to close in a little bit more closely with the coastline of Vietnam. That's right, okay, but go to the southern part of North Vietnam. See, he's pointing it, because if I point it, will be, okay. So the airplane was closing in close, and I looked out and I saw another landform number 2, and I took that to be North Vietnam. And North Vietnam goes into kind of a panhandle, a funnel right there, and don't wiggle it too much, you'll make me dizzy here. So down to the DMZ, and then the DMZ south of that is South Vietnam. So the panhandle there was dark, lights were out also. At that moment, with my good imagination, I thought, well, this is when the MiG-21 is going to come out and shoot us down. I'll never make it to Vietnam. Well, that didn't happen. But what did happen was something very extraordinary. And that is that I knew we were getting into South Vietnam airspace for the reason that when I looked out the window this time, the landform came into view, and I saw a sprinkle, glint, glitter as far as the eye could see from just a little bit back of the coastline. And I looked at that glinting glitter that was intermittent and happened random, and I thought, yep, this is South Vietnam. And I knew that the sparkles that I was seeing was ordnance, and I assumed that was 155 howitzer. In a couple of months, I would learn there was another mix in there. And I wondered 2 things. The first thing I remembered was that when we travel eastbound over, let's say, the Mississippi to Missouri or Ohio or any place like that in the summertime to see grandma, we're going to see lightning bugs, fireflies. And you see that glint and then it extinguishes. That's what it looked like. And then there's another thought that came into my mind. And I remembered as we were flying there, just moments away from landing at Benoit, back in basic training, on the side of the latrine on the wall was a poster map of Vietnam, and it had all the splash points, flashes where skirmishes and battles had happened. There were notations, what the date was, the name of the battle, and all those flash points came back to my mind. I thought, well, wow, you mean we're having contact all over? Because that's what I saw. But I came up with an answer just a little bit, actually a few days after that. So now the airplane is making its approach to Benoit. And if you want to point, Benoit, if I remember correctly, is just a little bit north of Saigon. And you'll recall that when you take a commercial flight here stateside, the approach is always a shallow approach. But this was a steep approach. And if you look here, I'm guessing maybe about 60 degrees. So I looked out, and the airplane's coming in at about 60 degrees to Benoit. And I thought, this guy, this captain, is going to go ahead and auger into the ground. That's what I thought. And then the PA system came on, and it was either the captain or the co-pilot. And the announcement said, on landing, in the event of a rocket attack, then the chutes will be activated, and everybody is to deplane as rapidly as possible, and everybody is on your own. Wow. This is Vietnam. So then at that point, you could hear a pin drop. So the plane landed, and when the door opened, 2 things here. First of all, when the door opened, I experienced what everybody in this room did. The air, the atmosphere felt like a wet silk scarf. I'd never experienced that before. And the other thing I remember is filing off the airplane, and we were all the new people. The stewardesses were there. I remember 4 of them. And they stood there at the doorway as we filed out, and each stewardess made eye contact and gave us a half smile. I couldn't believe that. It's as if the body language was saying that they knew that some of us would return in a year and some of us wouldn't. So typical women, they don't have to say anything. All I have to do is glance, and you know exactly what they're thinking. All right. So then I was manifested on a flight, C-123, and keep the map there still, please. And the flight was to Two Corps, and if you can point out where Two Corps is there, which is the Central Highlands, you might recall, you may not, that the war zones were broken into four. So Two Corps is the mountainous area. That's where I was manifested. So we were the NUFers heading on to the C-123. C-123, the back end kind of angles up like this, kind of looks like a dragonfly that landed. We were going up the ramp. So we were the newbies, the NUFers, and the FNGs. And if you forget what NUFer means, ask your neighbor sitting next to you. All right, so we were filing on in the, not the manifest, but the boarding sergeant read our names, and then the last thing he said, just as the ramp was going up, he said, "You are going up country." He didn't say where, that's what he said. Now, after college and before being drafted, I worked in New York City every day on Fifth Avenue, coat and tie and all that kind of stuff. And you go uptown and downtown, you took a conveyance, you took a subway or a bus or whatever. So I thought to myself, I'm going up country, uptown. I know they don't have subways under the jungle, but I'm going uptown. So there you have it. All right, so let's go to the next slide. It should be on K there. Nope, not the map, but on K. Nope, back to on K. It should be the on K map. Well, he's going up now. Boy, I'm glad he's doing that, not me. But there you go. Thank you. Okay, so on K was our destination. It was a place I'd never even heard of before. And we landed at the fire base called Camp Radcliffe, which is named after a soldier who happens to have been the first American service person who was killed in Vietnam. Now, Camp Radcliffe, in the 50 plus years since I left Vietnam, there have only been two people I have met. One is Steve Newton, who gifted this map to me. It's an aerial photograph of what the camp looks like, and I met one other, but I've never met anybody else, and yet it was a large installation. All right, so we landed there, and then I had 3 days of in-country training, and I'm going to leave it right there for now. Highlight just those 3 days. Actually, go ahead. Hit the next one. See if you can hit the Chu Hoi business. Okay, those are the principles of the war, the architect. We got Ho Chi Minh there on the left. I heard his name 500 times when I was in Vietnam. Of course, President Johnson there. So politics, we could talk for 10 hours. We'll skip that. All right, next. Nope, next. Okay. Yeah, that's what I want. There's 3 Chu Hois there. All right. So 3 days there for in-country training, and it was very effective. I'm only going to go over one segment of the training, and that was the instructor was a Vietnamese. And so we were the NUFers there, and he was going to train us. He's not going to. He did. He trained us on what he called sapper breaching of the perimeter concertina wire. Wow. So I'd heard the buzz term sappers almost from the beginning, way back in basic training. I was in training for 9 months. So here he was, and he was called a Kit Carson Scout. I'd never heard the term before, didn't know what it meant, and then we were told that he was a Chu Hoi. Chu Hoi means approximately open arms, which is a euphemism meaning a defector, which means he left the side of either the VC or the NVA. This guy was VC. During the course of the year, every patrol I went on, without exception, had at least one Chu Hoi or sometimes 2. Most of them were quite good, very genuine people, very intelligent. So this guy was a Chu Hoi, and he said, okay, here's how we would breach the concertina wire at your fire base. This is what we do. So he had about, I think it were 4 Y sticks, probably this wide or this long. Okay, so he cut branches from the tree. There were 4 Y sticks, And then he stripped down to his boxer shorts, and we're all there in a half circle watching him. He said, "This is what we do." So he got down on his butt, and he morphed into inchworm, and he took the first Y stick and he pushed up the first concertina wire. There were three of them there parallel. Concertina wires are kind of roly-poly, and they have sharp edges like razors. They are lethal. They are terrible. So, and then there were three parallel and then one on top. So he said, "This is what we do." So he put the first Y stick in, popped up the stick, and then he put head first, torso, and then butt. In his other hand, he had wire cutters. So he said, "This is what we do." And he said, "With our wire cutters, we're going to cut the trip flare and also the what do you call it? Claymore mine." Well, I'm getting old here. So if you have ever or had ever seen a trip flare go off, you will never forget it. It lights up the area like the noonday, like something else. You wouldn't believe it. So he said we cut the trip flare, and then we cut the Claymore wire. Claymore mine, if it goes off, it has to be manually detonated. It's too ugly to talk about. So that's what they did. Then he got to the second wire, and he put the Y stick up like this, plunked it in the ground, then head, torso, butt, and then the third one. So in no time at all, well, there was a little bit of time, as he inched worm in there, he was all the way through. I didn't see him touch any wire or get cut or anything, and he's in his boxer shorts. All right, so there was other training. That's the only one I'm going to bring up. Okay, so day two, the only point I'm going to bring up here is a little bit of Vietnam lore. I would say that when I was being trained, with very few exceptions, all of the instructors, cadre, were Vietnam vet returnees, and they had been to the various units, and they had stories, and most of them would share stories. The story that really got me was the story of the screw you lizard with the F-bomb expletive. So, and I thought to myself, we've all heard language. I thought, get the hell out of here. I'd been a camp counselor for years, and we always had initiation when we got new campers for every summer. And I thought, this is initiation for another Vietnam, green newbie, new for FNG guy. There is no such thing as a screw you lizard chiming out a F-bomb expletive. It doesn't happen. So anyway, that second day during the night, I heard it. I could not believe my eyes, and I thought it was a wind-up toy mocking an enemy on the edge of the woods trying to taunt the soldiers. So if you're going to look it up on your search engine, don't do it now because I'm trying to get through this. So you can listen to the Screw You Lizard with the F-bomb expletive later when we close business here. All right. So the third day was the day before I got deployed, and the venue there, or what we did was the commander of the 4th Division. And let me just say this really quickly here. Back to the manifest. I'm going to backtrack here. When I found out on the manifest I was going to the 4th Infantry Division, I was disappointed. I thought that the 4th Infantry Division, in my view, didn't have the pluck that I was looking for. By this time, I was committed to Vietnam. At first, I wasn't. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, cream of the crop. Or maybe the Screaming Eagles, they're top of the heap also, or the 9th, they have, they're stellar also, or the 25th Infantry, and they have a patch that looks like an electric strawberry. But no, I was with the 4th, and I thought this is, well, it is what it is. So here we are, 4th Infantry Division, the Brigadier commander is there. We're all packed into a room, and we're all going to go the next day deployed to our assignments in 2 corps. So the Brigadier General's there, and he said, I'm going to bring up only 3 things he said. The first thing he said was, when he looked at us, looked at everyone in the eye, he said, the career officers, this is again right after the Cambodian incursion, he said, the career officers now consider the war over. And I did a sigh of relief. I was one of the persons, there were several of us who had a sense of mortality, meaning that it was a one-way trip, Vietnam there, but you don't come back. So when he said that, I had a sigh of relief. I was thinking, man, I might get home, see my girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. This is cool. But what he didn't say when he said that, that, the career officers considered war over. What he should have said, which he didn't, was, well, you're going to be hit with smaller units like squads, and by the way, you can get just as dead with a squad as you could with a bigger element. He didn't tell us that. Okay, and the other thing he said, and this is a quote, he said, your mission is to dispatch the enemy and send him to his God, end quote. The third thing he said, he had a little bit of Warner Brothers Hollywood in it, a little bit of tone, intonation there. And he said, if, and then he did a pause, you're going to get captured, pause, pause. And then he repeated himself. He said, if you're going to get captured, pause, don't. Good day, gentlemen. And he walked off. Holy crap. So there it was. So the next day was deployment day. We had 3 choppers, if you can turn to that. And the deployment, we had 3, there's half a dozen there. The troop carriers were what's called Huey UH-1Ds or Huey UH-1Hs, generally called Hueys, as distinguished from the Huey gunship, which is very well known. It's configured differently. The Huey gunship is the one, there's an example at the Wings Over the Rockies. It's 43 inches shorter, but this is a troop carrier. 3 of them were there, and I thought they were Hueys, but that's not what the lingo was. The lingo was they were either slicks or birds. You didn't take a Huey, you took a slick. So I was in the 3rd slick. These are the new people going to my unit. They didn't say which unit, they didn't say where, they said, you are going forward. That's it. There's a lot of margin there. So we took off, and I could see we were at the same elevation, or the same altitude, probably 2,500 feet maybe over the ground. And I could see the elevation was increasing. It was getting higher. What bothered me was the chopper was still at the same, or the slick was still at the same flight level. And again, I was in the 3rd one. So now at this point, with the mountains getting taller, we're now at ridge level, and I didn't like that at all. So I was looking at the scenery, ridge level, and I thought, can't we just maybe go up a little bit? That's what I was thinking. And we had 6 of us to a chopper. We sat there with our butts, legs hanging out, or pointing out. So then I saw the fire base come into view. I didn't know the name yet, but I would in a few minutes. And if you've ever seen a picture, maybe a postcard of something of Machu Picchu, which is a Inca holding ancient Inca fortress on the very tip of a mountain in Peru, that's exactly what this looked like. That Inca place that you may have seen pictures had big fitted stones without concrete or cement or anything. So that's what it looked like, only the stones fitted here were sandbags. So we landed there and did the initiation stuff to get started. And I learned very quickly which squad I was with. I learned that my first mission would be the next day. And I also learned that I was a replacement for a troop who'd been killed just the week before. And he had tripped a booby trap, and he was killed. And I heard that all of the members of the squad had offered their blood and they couldn't save him. And I also heard he had a wife and 2 kids at home. So I was his replacement. So now we get to the nighttime, and where the hell did my stuff go here? Hang on just a minute. All right. Who's playing games with me here? What happened to my fuzzy beast that was down here? I'm looking for that gorilla type thing. Yeah, no, I had him in. Where is it? Yeah, somebody stole it. It was that monkey-looking thing. I put it right here on the floor.
Somebody help us out by finding something.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I owe you one. I'll give you a diet beer later. Thank you. All right, so this is very interesting. So it was the first night there, but I'm only going to talk about 3.5 days, but I got to do the night before I get to the 3.5 days, and then we'll close this discussion here. So it was nighttime, and I was in a foxhole with a seasoned troop. I was a new kid, so I had to be chaperoned. And the foxhole was facing west, very mountainous area, very steep ravines, triple canopy, very jungled. And so night was falling. Night in Vietnam was about 12 hours. So you're saying in round dollars, maybe 7 o'clock at night is maybe 7 in the morning. So it's dark and light. It's half and half. So we're in the foxhole, and then the monsoon had just started. And the monsoon, I could see, was kind of a pitter-patter, very annoying drizzle. It wasn't really pouring, but it was just enough to really, annoy us. So I'm in the foxhole with a seasoned guy, and I'm the noofer. It's getting dark. I can see the Inky Mountains getting darker still. And and everybody had guard for the whole year, twice a night. So this is my first shift, and I was being chaperoned. So we're late at night there, and I hear the most eerie sound I've heard in my life. It sounded like a bellowing, and there was a little bit of kind of an echo, and you think that no echo because the jungle would absorb it. That's not true. The opposite was. And there was a little bit of Doppler effect there. So if I'm facing west, if you look to the right, that's north. If you look to the left, that's south. In the Doppler effect, this bellowing would start on the right side towards the north, and then after a moment or two or three, again, it would go on down the line. And it sounded to my ears, it sounded like halfway between, say, a foghorn and a moose being goosed. That's what it sounded like. And I turned to the troop there, the seasoned guy, and I said, in the dark, and we were probably 4 feet away, I said, what the hell is that? And somehow in the dark, I could make out his white teeth. And this was the all-American shit-eating grin he had. And he said, and we don't curse here, so I didn't say that. But anyway, he said, man, them's are orangutans. Oh, crap. So if you ever took your grandkids to the zoo and you might have seen an orangutan, what it looks like is it looks like a squat gorilla, kind of a brownish, reddish thing, pot-bellied, plump, and it's got a face that looks like a squished pumpkin, long arms, and not very prepossessing, but that's what it was. And I thought, oh, crap. So I was thinking, being the college kid I was, I thought, well, let's see now. The VC are going to be shooting at me. The MVA will shoot at me. The Anopheles mosquito is going to bite me, and I'll get either Vivax or falciparum or both. Bamboo vipers are going to want to snip at me, and now freaking, orangutan. And he said, you know what? He said, if you're walking point and the orangutan sees you, they'll drop down from the tree and they'll slap the bat snot out of you. And I could see the grin. And I thought, oh, crap, this is too much. So it was a Marine later on who told me, he says, man, you're gullible. He said, those were elephants trumpeting. And what they do is the elephants trumpet to signal one another, and they carry materiel down from North Vietnam. They pack them like mules, and they travel at night, and the elephants would signal one another. So that's with that. Okay, so next day is mission day, M day. So we're up, and with my squad, we had 2 choppers or 2 slicks, and we CA'd into the LZ. So that's buzz term. CA means combat assault, and LZ means landing zone. So we CA'd into the LZ, and what that means is the chopper or the slick or the bird, whatever you want to call it, hovers maybe, let's say, 4.5 feet above the ground, and then you unass the chopper, which means you jump out. And then when you jump out, you jump into what's called sawgrass and elephant grass. Now, the sawgrass is named because when it nicks your arms, and it keeps on nicking, if your arms start to fester, then at that point you have a good chance of getting jungle rot, and we won't go there. And then the elephant grass means it's tall enough where if you stoop a little bit, then the enemy won't see you. So there we were in our temporary positions. The choppers took off, and the LT lieutenant was then calling in the sit rep, which means situation report. So we had a few moments there before we assembled into our configuration. So in that few minutes, even though I worked in the city, I've been at heart a nature boy since the day I was born. So I just sat on my butt and I looked. And I saw, just in those few moments before we got started, probably 9 shades of green. And I thought green was green until you go to Vietnam. I saw chartreuse green, Kelly green, lime green, OD green, verdigris green, every freaking green you could think of just by the different trees. And I counted them and came to 9. So then all of a sudden it's time to assemble. So we assembled in what's called a file, sometimes called a ranger file. In other words, you're not on line going laterally, you're going through the trail or the jungle and you're in a file. So the way that worked was the first man in the file was called a rifleman. He was called the point man. The point man had an M16 and he had a machete. And then the second man is the LT. He was the brains and the CEO behind everything. He was the one who called in artillery support. He's the one who did the map reading. He was the CEO. What a awesome position that was. The next man was the machine gunner, and